Hello, friends, and welcome to the live stream. People in the chat, let me know. Can you hear me? Am I coming out of the right microphone? Can you hear this music? And do you, by any chance, recognize it? Welcome along to the stream, heroes and villains. So for those of you who remember the video, this is the theme music to Housing Market. This is the theme music that I used in the video for the superhero that we invented. If you're new to the stream, then you will realize that I'm lighting a candle, which is how we always like to start. Some of these candles were even given to me by fans of the show, who sent them to the PO box. Nice. I'm just trying not to set fire to myself. This track is actually called The Clockmaker's Magic Pendulum, and I got it from a royalty-free music website. So welcome along, welcome Teeth Gang. It's good to have you all here. So if this is your first time on the stream, what I usually like to do is go through. Let's make the atmosphere slightly more chill. I like to go through the feedback to the last video and talk about some of the notes I had to myself. My usual guide is if I had infinite time and money in which to make the video again, how would I do it? And I go through some of the comments as well. Sometimes I like to show the comments actually on the stream, but tonight, instead of doing that, I have a special guest here to talk about the video with me, Mexie, who was actually in the video and helped me write it and did an absolutely fantastic job. So let's bring in Mexie.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, it's good to have you here. Thank you very much for joining me on the stream.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
For inviting me to do this video. It was really awesome. Very
I'm
creative.
really glad. I'm really glad to have you in there. Like, as soon as I started watching your stuff, I was like, I definitely need to do something with Mexie.
Damn.
And as soon as I planned to do this video on the housing market and the housing crisis, I was just like, I definitely need Mexie's input. By the way, hail Sobek, everybody.
Oh yeah, hail Sobek. That's so funny.
I have just about recovered from the Donkey Kong stream. Just about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like amazing. What was the final total?
I think it was close to 400,000, if not there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
That was so amazing.
My brother sent me a Guardian article which was published like a few days after it happened, which said which described it's like all the guests were internet famous and one of them was me. So he was like, "You're officially internet famous." I was like, "Woo!" Thank you, Guardian.
That is so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess as the guest, did you have any notes to yourself or to me on how the episode went? Like, how do you think it went down? Were you happy with how it ended up, or?
Man, I loved it. I thought it was great. I just really loved the whole comic book idea. I thought it was super creative. It was a really fun video, and I thought it ended up really well. I know we did get more comments, kind of just a lot of questions about, well, how exactly would this work?
Yeah.
And a lot of kind of anxiety around, well, are we just expropriating everyone's home, that kind of thing? So I guess the note I would have is, I guess we could have clarified that a bit more. But in my opinion, I thought we were just trying to like start a discussion about this stuff, not necessarily like, well, here's exactly how we're going to do it. But certainly there are some things like that we could have cleared up.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the big bits of feedback that I got, especially shout out to our BreadTube who asked some really nice detailed questions. I think we do actually have the third partner in the collab is in the chat. Scutch Draws did the art, and he's here. And hey, we've got our first super chat of the night. Thank you to Charles de Champs de Boisebert. Thanks for that super chat. I was showing Max earlier on. My flatmates gave this to me for Christmas, and it even lights up and makes it completely unreadable.
That's so awesome.
But hail Sobek, and welcome along to Scutch in the chat. So I guess we can get into like the details and stuff later. I guess a lot of people ask, why did I choose to do it as a comic book? And I didn't actually ask you, what did you think when I explained the idea that it was going to be like in character and as if it was a comic book?
Oh man, I was so excited. I was really excited because yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to do more creative things with my own videos because I kind of just like it's just like here's the information, here's me lecturing at you. But I wanted to get into more creative stuff, and when you sent me that, I was like, man, what an amazing idea. And I loved kind of challenging myself to write a script that was in character. So yeah, I thought it was a great idea. And I think it's something that would have, mass appeal. I think we have to just make our stuff funny in general to get people to watch it.
Yeah, like, is it memeable? What's the
Is
meme?
it memeable? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm still not entirely sure why I decided to do it like that. I guess so with every video I like to try and challenge myself. Regulars on the stream will know that I like to talk about what my challenge was. And this time the challenge was use a green screen, learn how to use a green screen, and do an entire video in character with an accent. And I guess there's something about, so I really like superhero films. And the whole superhero aesthetic, and there's something about using that to describe real world problems that I like. Because I remember when I went to see the Avengers in cinemas, there's that one bit where they go to Germany to stop Loki, and then like they just conduct superpowered military operations in Germany without asking. And I was the one person in the cinema who was like, hang on a minute, shouldn't Nick Fury be like, thank you, Chancellor? And then they go. It's just the kind of thing that stood out to me, but because just an incurable SJW. But I guess there's something about like supervillains seeming big and unstoppable, but then the solution is like courage and thinking outside the box and teamwork. And there was something about taking that and applying it to like the housing crisis, which people, it's always going to be around and there's nothing we can really do about it. And I was like, there's something about mapping that onto like a supervillain thing, which I liked. We've had 2 more super chats. Thank you to the person who really liked your video on cops, and thank you to the person who says Donkey Kong says trans rights. Indeed, he does. So yeah, in terms of like supervillain, like and superhero aesthetic, that's why I went for it. But I guess let's get into details. People were curious about like the details of the system that we would put forward. Where do you want to start? Because I'm conscious of like monopolizing it.
No. Go ahead. I know you have some notes, so I'm down to jump in whenever with whatever you bring up.
Okay. Well, so you actually saw the original drafts of the script that were originally a lot more detailed? Didn't you? There was like, we had that Google Doc going, and there was you probably remember there was a big bit in the tail end of the video that was like really dense and heavy about like fire regulations and stuff, which I ended up cutting.
Right.
Because it was just the second half, the bit of the video after I knew that there needed to be a turn after your bit finished that then took us to the end. But having 2 more turns just made it really clunky. So there was originally a lot of people are asking, can I release the full script? No, I didn't save my drafts. But we can talk about some of the details tonight. So I guess one of the big questions people had is if we acknowledge that the hero is actually the villain and housing market and housing crisis, and we sort of we destroy the property force and get rid of private property, how do we decide where people live? And I had some thoughts on this, but what do you?
How do we decide where people live? Well, I guess, I guess we should probably talk about what maybe we should start with talking about like how we saw like private property in terms of housing being abolished, because I think that'll have bearing on where people would live. Like, for example, people were like, if I bought a house, then would you just be taking my house? And I don't think that's what we were saying. I'm not sure if that's what you were saying. No. Right. So that's definitely not what we were saying. When we say private property in terms of housing, I was thinking, private property in terms of if you own a house or if you own multiple houses and you're using that to generate rent. So if you're using that to garner an income, then that's private property in terms of housing, and that would be abolished. But I think there's a lot of different ways we could do that that wouldn't just be, taking, like, if somebody happens to own two houses, not necessarily just taking away one of their houses. I'm not sure exactly how we could like fund whatever, but I'm sure people would be like compensated perhaps for if you have a house that, you know, it's not going to be private property anymore. Or if you just own, you're just like living in a house. I don't think anyone's saying like, get out of there or like, yes. So anyway, so I feel like if everyone kind of already is living in a place, then they would continue living there. And then it's like the empty homes is what we would be determining who lives in those homes. And then we would just be making sure that nobody in the future would be using housing as private property, like using housing to generate rent.
Yeah.
And I think that's easier to think about than people just assume that we're just like taking everyone's house away and then no one's going to have a home. And then how are we going to organize who's living where, right?
Yeah. That I think was what some people's concern had. So, Ben was one commenter who's like, "Can I still lock the door if I don't own my house?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course you can like still lock your door." So I don't own this flat that I live in right now. I rent it, but I still have like I'm still legally recognized as a resident who has the right to determine who comes and goes. Thank you, William Cleary, for that super chat. So yeah, I like instead of having like owners or tenants, I was thinking like you just have legally recognized residents. So right now, things like privacy is like tied to property rights, and I was just like, well, instead of tying it to property rights, you just have the right to privacy. Like, yeah. So that was. So some people worry like, are they going to like take away my house or whatever? And I was like, no, that's not necessarily what it involves. If you live somewhere, then you can continue living there. Some people will still though, like how do we decide who gets to live where? Like if two people want to live in the same place, then how do we figure that one out? Reese Pieces, thank you for that super chat. And NerdSync, Scott, I have seen you in the chat. Thanks very much for stopping by, man. Samuel Green and Terminus Est Eternae in the comments wanted to know how do we decide who lives where. And for me, this came down to how do we decide like it depends on like who administers properties. Who's like in charge of that if it's not like owners or whatever, which is what this big section on like fire safety that I originally wrote was all about. It's because I had fire on the brain because I'm writing my Steve Bannon video and there's an extended metaphor about fire. So that was why I included the bit in Venezuela, the video about Chavez recognizing the communes as legally distinct from the government, but still like having the right to administer property. So I guess like, is it weird to say that you'd have a lottery to determine where somebody would live? Like, if you want to move to Islington, you go on like the local council website or the local tenant union or residents union website where they have a list of the things that are available, and you put your name in, and then they draw a name. Like, are there any obvious problems with that? Do you think?
I don't think so. And I mean, I guess like if it was a really, busy area and a lot of people wanted to live there, then like we could also build more housing, but we could do that collectively, like as a socialized endeavor instead of, a private contractor building and then selling to individual people, right? We could be like, okay, there's like a need for this area. There's like a lot of people waiting for the lottery or whatever. And then we could organize that collectively. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either.
Yeah, and that's kind of ties into a point that I had from another question from later on as well. But like, in terms of lotteries, like, if two people want to move into the same, like, so this is an empty mansion in Islington, right? And 100 people want to live there. To my mind, like a lottery is a fairer way of determining who gets to live there than a market, because at least you've got an equal chance of getting in, like no matter how rich you are. Like, maybe you don't get lucky and you don't get to live in the mansion, but you still had an equal chance of moving in there. You still had a shot.
Well, I feel like, I mean, if it was a mansion, like also maybe wouldn't we like divide that up into smaller units or like have, smaller flats? Like maybe
Yeah, yeah,
necessarily
yeah. I
we
guess.
wouldn't have like one person living in the mansion.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, or maybe it would be like a historic building. When we were like, oh,
Yeah,
maybe we
that's
don't want
true.
to. Like, someone's going to live in this castle. Like, we
Yeah,
may as well have a lodge to decide who gets to live there.
that's
That just
true.
seemed to be a fairer way of doing it than like uh
Hmm.
than just doing it with the market. So
Yeah, that
you
makes
and
sense.
somebody in the chat brought up the idea of who oversees the building of houses,
Hmm.
and you said we could definitely do that collectively. Like, and I yeah, my kind of tentative answer to that is that I talked a little bit in the video about like the state taking over the powers of the property force and how that some people are against that,
Hmm.
um, and tried to like go for this compromise option with like either tenants unions or communes.
Hmm.
Is there like an obvious problem, do you think, about like having the state being the central administrator of, okay, there's a need for housing here, let's pay for it and build it?
I mean, I think it could get like just clunky, or there could be kind of a gap between or like a delay between like when the need arises and like when the state is able to respond. So I do like the idea of entrusting that to smaller communes or like smaller, yeah, tenant unions or whatever, so that there's people working on the local level that can administer this. And then if there's problems, I guess like throw it up to a higher level. That's just
Okay,
personally
cool.
like
Yeah,
what, yeah.
that's really cool. Like starting low and getting higher rather than,
Yeah.
okay,
Starting
cool.
high, getting low.
Rather than using all the superpowers at once. You don't send in the Avengers all at once. You kind of
Right.
slowly.
Yeah, you stagger it.
Yeah, slowly build it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody in the chat asked earlier on, and also quite a few commenters asked me, uh, instead of all of this comic book stuff, why not just build lots of public housing, and just kind of you could even like tax the rich, have a big mansion tax, build lots of affordable, good quality public housing. Are there any obvious drawbacks to that you can see?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of doing that, but like think about like why aren't we doing that right now? Why isn't that happening? And I don't think that this is a system that is set up to facilitate that. You know what I mean? It's like we've been trying for so long to tax the rich and have more of a social democratic, like people won't even go for social democracy in like Canada, the US. So it's like, how are we going to actually socialize everything if we can't even get like marginal reforms passed at all? So anyway, I just feel like the capitalist system is such that um yeah, there's a reason why we're not building those things. It's not very profitable to build those things. People aren't supportive of it. People aren't supportive of like raising, I mean, people aren't even supporting raising taxes on the super wealthy, like the AOC thing with people over $10 million in revenue or in income every year. People aren't even supporting that, right? So it's like, I mean, it would be wonderful to make more public housing, but like we're not doing it, and there's systemic reasons why we're not doing it, right? So,
Yeah, that was like was my idea. It was my response to it as well. Like, I thought so. Let's imagine that somebody like ran on a platform of, we're going to tax the rich loads, and we're going to
mhm,
get like 5 billion from taxes on the wealthy, and we're going to build like 10,000 new homes.
mhm,
Um, I mean, the first concern I had about an approach like that. I mean, I'm all for it, and I might even vote for it. But my first concern with something like that is that it's kind of enormously wasteful when we've already got enough
mhm.
houses for everyone.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
true.
really wasteful in terms of finances and environments as well. Like in terms of
Mhm,
expanding like urban sprawl and stuff, it just seems like a waste to me. It
mhm,
also takes a lot of time, and in the meantime, people die. People die from being homeless.
mhm, mhm,
So it seemed wasteful in terms of like money and human life and the
mhm,
environment. Whereas one of the
mhm,
advantages of expropriating empty properties is like you could end homelessness within a month.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
suddenly the homelessness is zero because everyone has a home.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so true. Also, it's like it doesn't solve the problem. Like it's still housing is still a commodity at that point. So it's like, yeah, public housing, it's more affordable, et cetera, but you still have to pay for it. So it's not a solution across the board for, people who can't pay for housing.
yeah, definitely. Um, and I mean, the scenario I envisage, like as I say, I might even vote for a policy like that. But the scenario I
Mhm.
envisage is like you get uh, like an extra 5 billion from taxes on the wealthy. We're going to build 10,000 new homes, and then it takes a while, and the public sort of interest in it fades, and then it's like, oh well, it's actually going to be 4.5 billion, and then the next parliament kind of revises down to actually big taxes is the smaller tax, and then it slowly gets kicked into the long grass, and then 5 years later the Tories or Canadian equivalent get in again, and then they nix the whole thing, and then we're back to square one. I mean, I'm definitely all for rinsing mansion owners, but the problem with something like that is that 5 years down the line the Tories get in again and turn it back, and we're back to square one again. So the market can never defeat the crisis, because the crisis is the necessary conditions for the market to operate.
Yeah. The crisis is the market.
Exactly, yeah. They're the same. The calls are coming from inside the house. We had a super chat question. Don't worry, Zoe B. I didn't miss it. I'm going to take this jacket off, though, because I'm incredibly warm because of these candles. So hang on just 1 second. Yeah, Clark Kent now full-on Superman. Oh, that's better. Okay, so Zoe B had a really interesting question, and thanks for your super chat. Said, how do we balance the creative freedom of architects with a community's desires and efficient use of materials?
Balance the creative genius of architects with materials that we have.
Yeah, the creative freedom of architects with the community's desires and efficient use of materials.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on, what is the architect being creative for, right? Like, what are we using our creativity for? Are we using it just to build some enormous, like, gaudy thing that's really beautiful, or are we using it? I don't know. There's like different ways of understanding creativity, right? It's just like, are we being creative in how many people we can house in a space really productively and comfortably? And, are we being creative in terms of how can we use the natural environment around us? Like, how can we use the sun and windows and wind and stuff so that we can cut down on energy costs within the building? Like, or is that what we're talking about when we're talking about creativity? Are we talking about like building this huge skyscraper or whatever that we don't really need? Yeah, I mean, I think that's something like we're gonna have to think about in general for all facets of our life going forward. Like, we're gonna have to be operating more of a resource-based economy where we don't just build things for the sake of building them. Like, we look at what the resources that we have are, and then we decide like, what do we need and how can we use these productively? So yeah, I mean, I guess I would think about like, well, what kind of creativity do we want in the future going forward? And like, we're not going to stifle creativity, but like also we're not going to be like wasteful.
Yeah, and the Howard Rorks of the world will have to make sure that they'll have to make sure that they're still like sticking within the bounds of what's efficient. I suppose this is kind of a spin-off of the question of like who oversees and who like administers, who like makes the call, I guess. And that's that could be down to like local councils, or it could be down to tenants unions and like local collectivized stuff. Just looking, we've had a couple more super chats, and I'm just making sure I copy them all into my Word doc so we don't miss any of them. Danny, I think I pronounced that right. Danny Bartel says, much love from DC. Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
I go back and forth on this, to be honest. I used to always say crunchy, but now just lately I've been going smooth because I feel like when I spread it, I'm getting kind of like it's not as spreadable. So that's me. But I would have said crunchy most of my life. So
fair enough. I'm strongly of the view that crunchy is correct ideology.
Yeah.
Crunchy Jif peanut butter. But then I'm also a huge heretic because I have bacon and peanut butter sandwiches, which are oh yeah, it's just salt and salt. They're great. And we had another super chat as well from somebody who said, restore and reinforce squatters' rights, decriminalize homelessness, and destroy anti-homeless architecture.
Fuck yeah.
All pretty good steps, I'd say. And somebody else who said, thanks for saving me from the libertarian pipeline. Hey,
beautiful.
You're welcome. My absolute pleasure. Thank you for that really cool question about architecture. That's really fun. So another bit of feedback I got from some people were saying, in this system where we abolish private property, isn't the state just the de facto owner? Like, if we're trying to avoid having a big bureaucracy and having the state run everything, and try and head off at the past the people who are like, "Ooh," like Soviet Russia, like, then isn't the state just the de facto owner if it's not the market? So, did you have any thoughts on that, since you brought up like collective ownership earlier on?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that the state would necessarily be the de facto owner, especially if we are entrusting, like, local communes and stuff with the ability to manage their own property and things like that. And I would want to see us moving towards, like, yeah, common property, collective property in a way that, like, I know people will argue that having it controlled by the state isn't necessarily undemocratic, because you could have like so many layers of whatever representatives that are recallable and all that stuff. But I just don't like that much distance between the people who are actually like living it and then the people who are deciding, even if it is quote unquote democratic. So yeah, I wouldn't say it would necessarily. I mean, I think we could really entrust like the localities to be in charge of their own, property areas and whatever. And then, like I said, like start low and then go high. Like if there's certain things that you can't decide at that level, then throw that up, but don't start up and come down, right?
Cool, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, that's similar to what I was thinking as well. So I guess when people, the two commenters who brought this idea up were Scott McLean and Muff Slam, nice name, said, isn't the state just the de facto owner? And my thoughts on that were like, there's a lot of dimensions of ownership, and the most salient one we're kind of talking about here is whether or not the property can be bought and sold. So in this system, the state still wouldn't be able to rent or buy or sell properties, because that's like no longer an option.
Right.
But somebody might come along and point out that if we're going to have things like privacy rights and you being able to like for instance, call the police if somebody's trespassing in the home that you are the legal resident of, the state's violence is still kind of backing that up. Somebody might say, an anarchist take might be, we still don't want that, in which case we could like think about how we might want to replace, people are already thinking about like how to replace police with community policing as well. So I think it's a really good point in terms of like who is still the de facto owner. Like paying attention to those kinds of lines is lines of tracing the lines of power is really interesting. Thank you to these other super chats coming in. Thanks. Geo Lesser says, Ollie, take your shirt off. And thank you to the other person who also just super chatted to say that I was hot.
Take it off.
And thank you to Fable Green, who said bacon and peanut butter is really gross. I'm an ANCAP now.
Yeah.
So I guess there was another big issue that I wanted to get to. But first, Alexandrite had a super chat. Do you have any thoughts on music or art as a tool for positive change?
Oh man, yeah. 100%. I think that has so much potential for positive change. I made a video about reclaiming radical creativity because recently I've just started reading fiction. I really recommend The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin to everybody. But yeah, I think it has so much power to affect positive change. And like, movies, art, etc. So many people are just really disengaged, but if you go to a movie and you like get all this information that way and you're entertained, that's why, yeah, your videos are so great, because it's just like, yeah, people are entertained, then they will absorb it and be like, hey, yeah, I'm getting something out of this experience. So
I mean, I hope so, and that can be what keeps people coming back as well. I guess so. Like Natalie's been a big demonstrator of like, if you make it entertaining, then people will want to watch it. People will want to be included and want to understand. So my next video, which is coming out early February, is all about Steve Bannon, and it's based on two stage productions. One is a play called The Arsonists by Max Frisch, and the other is the musical Hadestown, which is on at the National at the moment. And there's a big song from Hadestown, which has a big prominent role in the video. So yeah, I think absolutely you can use music for positive change, like, or at least I hope you can, because I'm using musical theatre in a big way in my next video.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Fuck Steve Bannon.
What's that?
I said fuck Steve Bannon.
I thought you said I like Steve Bannon. I was like, I'm surprised to hear that.
Are you kidding me? No, he came to Toronto to debate David Frum.
Yes, I have a lot of clips from that debate in my video. He makes some interesting moves in that, which are worth paying attention to.
Yeah, we were all there was like thousands of people protesting outside. It was
yeah. Did you see you've seen the video of it?
No.
Somebody actually got inside and was protesting inside. Somebody hung a big banner
Oh, amazing.
from the balcony at the start of his speech, and he's very slick with it. He's very, very
Yeah.
slick. He
Mm.
claps and he applauds them, and he's like, thank you for that free speech. And
Yeah, right.
when that person ends up getting removed from the theater, and the moderator's like a real slimy guy about it. He's like, we've given you a chance, and thanks everyone. It's
Yeah.
liberal centrism.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just oozing centrism, kind of bland.
Yeah.
People are asking, he came to Oxford as well. Are you using footage from that? Yes, I am. Yes, I am indeed. Benjamin Hbomb says, much love, Olly. One problem I see as a disabled person with lottery allocation is that obviously some people have more priority and specific housing needs, so I can't see how that would be most fair. That is a really, really good point. So I guess a way of doing that would be to, if there are houses that you can have like a weighted lottery. So lottery, I guess, doesn't necessarily mean like lotteries and buying a lottery ticket as we know now. There's a philosopher called Jens Timmerman, who did some fantastic work on weighted lotteries and ways of having like a lottery where everyone has like an equal, or well, some people have like a better chance of winning. It's a way of like weighting something that's still based on chance. So I can definitely see how if you had a disability that required like a certain kind of housing, like whoever was administering the distribution of houses would like make sure that there was like a special list of the houses that accommodated your needs. So I definitely think this kind of system would be compatible with something like that. But that's a really good point. Thank you very much for bringing it up. I know that philosophy of disability is something that I often neglect because I'm able-bodied. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Thomas M. Creamer, thank you for your super chat, but I fear that if we talk about Brexit on this stream, we will be here all night. Ditto, brother Malcolm, on the subject of capital punishment. Zarabug asks, question for Mexie, where did you get that top?
This top? I don't even know. Let me check the tag.
Meanwhile, thank you, Zoe, for turning up in the chat. Yes, this thanks
Design
very much.
Lab? I don't know.
Design Lab. Cool.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't shop very often, so I just have things for like years and years and years, and then I'm like,
I was given this shirt for my 17th birthday.
Wow, nice.
It has changed shape a lot since then, and so have I. But
man, that's awesome. Yeah, I honestly still have clothes from high school. Like I don't buy clothes that often.
So I guess there was a big issue that I wanted to touch on from NPC7654 in the comments, and also somebody who goes by the name Lima Liquor asked, if nobody owns anything, then you get tragedy of the commons. People don't take care of the things that they get for free. So if we just make housing free, then won't that kind of all the housing stock will be destroyed? People won't take care of it. Did you have any thoughts on this? Because I have some strong opinions on this.
Oh man, I mean, I made a video about the tragedy of the commons and how it's like complete crap. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why. Like, if I was given this home to live in, I don't see why I would want to like live in filth or like trash it, or you know what I mean? Like, why would I want to destroy the place where I'm living? That doesn't make any sense. So yeah.
So I think it's like, I mean, perfect. You've captured it like perfectly. Like, why would people destroy the place in which they live? I guess I had like a twofold response to this. One is that like the idea that people don't take care of things they get for free is just like fundamentally not true. Witness this shirt, which I have had since I was 17, which means that it's I've had it for years. And these two colored lights, one of which was a gift from a fan, and one of which was a Christmas present from someone else. And I've taken great care of them because I love them. And the makeup that I'm wearing on my face was also a gift from fans. Like, so the idea that people don't take care of things that they get for free, I'm just like, oh, that's just so just blatantly obviously false.
Yeah, and also like if you're getting like, I mean, the reason why people today might not take care of the houses that they're in is because everyone's in this horrible rat race. Like they don't have time. Like they're just trying to get money. Like if you don't have enough money to upkeep your house, then you're not going to be able to take care of it or whatever, right? But if everyone just had housing right off the bat and they didn't have to worry about that, they didn't have to like run out and join the rat race and spend all of their time just trying to pay rent, then they would probably have more time to actually just like take care of where they're living, etc. You know? So I don't really see
Yeah.
that.
Definitely, and the kind of the other angle I took on it was like the idea that landlords currently do take care of flats
Oh yeah.
when they own it is like, I don't know what it's like where you live in Canada, but the idea that landlords take care of flats in London is a joke. Like
No.
I do not know a single person living in London who doesn't have some kind of story like this is broken or this is bad and my landlord won't fix it. Like I said on
Mhm.
Twitter a while ago, I met a girl at a party before Christmas who has mushrooms growing out of the ceiling above her bed. And
What?
like, yeah, and the landlord's like, that's just water damage. She's like, no, they're not. Like, it's fungus.
Ew.
Like, yeah, like they have like domes. They're fungi.
Oh.
And the place that I lived before this flat, the landlord did not set foot in it for 2 years. I never saw him. I met him like twice.
Mhm.
And you know, I was the one who made that place from a property, like a structure that keeps out the wind, into
Mhm.
a home, a place where
Mhm.
human beings can live. And like that, and
Mhm.
when the toilet broke and when the shower broke, that was me. I fixed
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And my flatmate sure as hell didn't. I did. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's actually such a good point.
yeah,
Same thing in Toronto. Yeah, I mean, so many landlords like because they don't care, right? Why would they care? They're already making money from you. They don't. They're just like, well, I've already got your money. Like, you know, if you leave, then maybe I'll pay to fix it so I can get someone else in here. But
yeah,
other than that, why would I pay? Because I
yeah.
already have you. And yeah,
Um,
every place that I moved in, I like painted all the walls. I like did everything. I like changed the toilet and whatever. And it's just like we're doing that because we want to.
yeah, definitely. And because there's a space in which we live and we want to take care of it. Like I have
Yeah.
a friend who lives on the east coast of America, and so I always get my space coast, coast to coast confused. I have somebody who lives in a flat on the east coast in the US, whose heating was broken like all winter. And you know they called the landlord again and again and again and again and again, and the landlord would not fix it. And eventually they had to get somebody else to like threaten to take the landlord to court, and they sent somebody around and fixed it within a day. And it's
Mhm.
like,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
so the idea that like that people you have to pay for something under capitalism in order to take care of it. It's just like
Mhm.
so obviously false.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just been drilled into us that that's
Yeah,
how it is. Like we
yeah.
need the market, you
I
know.
guess one potentially like interesting point that issue does bring up though is like stuff like there's a fire safety regulations, which originally there was this big section of video about it. So I guess if the properties
Speak on
are
it.
yeah, I guess if the properties are like administered by either local councils or by residents unions or like local collectivist structures, there could be somebody who lives in the property whose job it is to be like the fire safety officer. Because right now it is the legal responsibility of landlords in a lot of cases to make sure buildings are like up to code and they're not
Mm.
going to burn down and stuff. Although, as we've seen in London, they don't always do it. So when I lived in Scotland, they had a similar system. Like I was the fire safety officers for the flat in Scotland. It was my responsibility, like legally, to make sure that the fire alarms worked and the extinguishers were where they need to be and all the rest of it. So there's already like precedent in place for people living in the flats to take care of them.
Mhm.
And like you know, you could send somebody from the local council or whatever, or the local collectivist agency round once a year to be like to inspect the building and be like, okay, this is what we need to do to fix it up and get it up to code. Or alternatively,
Mhm.
it's kind of fine. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if we are doing this at more of a local level and we do have these like collectives that are overseeing it, then the collectives aren't going to be like, yeah, sure, like destroy these houses. You know what I mean? Like as a community, we'll be like, no, no, hey, like let's take care of this, you know? So,
mhm. On a similar note, something I wanted to touch on, a commenter called Zeratul Roos said that if we give homeless people houses, they will deteriorate because they won't have the money to take care of it. And this comment like made me very upset because I think it kind of really misunderstands the nature of homelessness and almost like runs the risk of portraying homeless people as being essentially venal, as being like
Mhm.
corrupting instruments of chaos, which they're just obviously not.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I actually did some nice little googling on this and found that if you Google housing first model, people have done studies into what happens if you just like, rather than say to homeless people, you need to be clean for 6 months or you need to have a job or whatever for a certain amount of
Mhm.
time. If you just give them a house first, that often has the best outcomes for them. They
Mhm.
stay in their accommodation for longer, and also it's like cheaper for the local authorities as well.
Mhm.
Because you've got to bear in mind that like you often need a registered address to apply for things like jobs and medical treatment or the necessary paperwork in order to get those things. And if you give
Mhm.
someone a home, then they have a base from which to start doing
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess. Sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you.
No, I've seen a documentary about exactly that, where they actually did. Yeah, they started by giving people homes, and it had the most positive effect ever. And it makes so much sense when you actually think about why. But yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
I'm saving up these super chats. We'll come back to them in a little bit. Don't worry. I guess on a related note, since we just brought up homelessness, one comment I did really enjoy or really got a lot out of from Jacob Grando was they said that that homelessness is a very serious subject. And that it was kind of flippant of me. It was my decision to like talk about it in terms of a comic book and like the homelessness ray and stuff. Which I think is a fair cop. I think that's a fair criticism. Like, I was a little iffy on whether like the homelessness ray. I was like, maybe this is a bit cheap. And I realize now that what I should have done was include the words of people who are or who have been homeless in the video, and presented them as like this is what the characters in the comics say about it, but made it clear, like as with the rest of the video within the fiction, that this is something that real world people have said. So I
Mhm.
definitely think, yeah, the charge of being slightly insensitive, I think in that regard, is definitely a fair cop. And thank you very much to Jacob Grander for bringing me up on that and reminding me that like remaining accountable to the people who are actually involved is like a key part of it. So
Mhm.
thank you for that. That was definitely a drawback of the format.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we had a few super chats coming in.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I forgot to save the names of them, but somebody said, carrying on from architecture and art talk, do you have any advice for how leftists in the arts can do good praxis in or within their work?
Well, that's a hard question. I guess it depends, like, what field of art, like, um, yeah, and like all pieces of art are so different that it's hard to say like this is what good praxis is and this is what is not good praxis, you know.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess just making sure your politics are on point and you're not like, alienating certain people in society with your art. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really have a great answer for this.
I guess there are some people doing interesting experiments with this sort of thing in the London theatre scene.
Mhm.
Um, there's a socialist theatre collective that's just starting up in London, which I'm going to try and get involved with if I can find the time. Which is trying to bring sort of not only socialist and kind of left wing messages to the art that they create, but also trying to like in terms of the group structure, trying to do it like reflect sort of equal decision making and stuff like that.
Mm,
So that's potentially one way of doing it. Again, I guess it depends on
mhm.
the art. Got a lot of super chats coming in, so we'll try and clear through them.
Okay.
Alice Pope Terry said, on the disability front, what entity would organize the weighted lottery, and how do we prevent that entity from becoming dehumanizingly bureaucratic?
Well, wouldn't that be the communal tenant union or whatever, like the commune that's organizing that particular locale? And so I would hope it wouldn't be terribly bureaucratic if it's more like bottom up instead of top down, right? It's like the people who are actually like people in that union would be living there too, right?
Hmm.
So they would be of the community, so it wouldn't just be a top down thing decision, right?
Yeah, that's a really good answer. That reminds me of a book by Harsha Warlier called "Undoing Border Imperialism," which
Hmm.
she has a really cool section on what is accountability. People often talk about being accountable to the people or whatever, and she says accountability is when the people who have like a material interest in what you're doing are involved in it and have the power to remove you. So I guess one way of hopefully preventing it from becoming like dehumanizing is if, as you say, like the people who are actually doing it are involved in that decision making process or involved in like running the lottery.
Yeah, the people who live there are involved in running the lottery, right?
Yeah. We had another super chat. Somebody said, have you given any thought to how after capitalism will combat the social structures it's supported that will persist? Racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, and so on. So this is a point that Kwame Ture makes in his book Stokely Speaks, which is just a collection of his speeches. And he points out correctly that even if you establish full socialism, like racism will still exist. And I guess again, it kind of ties into accountability and like giving the people who are affected by it the option to sort of lead the way on that and to run their lives, I suppose.
Yeah, I actually just made a video about like restorative justice kind of and accountability processes, and just the fact that we all have work to do. Like even those of us who consider ourselves like woke leftists, we all have internal work to do because like all of the systems that we are fighting, I said this in the video, but like they all exist within us to some extent, and like all of us are inculcated with these tropes of like competition and power and hierarchy and all of this stuff. And like we all have to do a lot of internal work on ourselves to make sure that we're coming from a place that is like selfless and is just not affected by like ego or or any of that. And that's going to take a lot of work.
Zizek talks about recognizing that capitalism shapes us even at the level of our desires as well.
Right.
That's quite
moving. Actually, I just watched this documentary called The Century of the Self, which I would recommend to everyone. It's Adam Curtis talking about like Freud's ideas, I guess, and how they were basically like weaponized to like bring out our desires and then just sell us shit and create this entire this entire society that we've created is based on just what's this need or this this ego inside of us that has just been captured by advertisers. Basically, it's super interesting. So
cool. I read a really interesting interview in The Economist a while ago with Adam Curtis about Brexit, which we won't talk about, but a friend of mine actually did that interview. My friend Nick did the interview, and it's really, really fascinating. It's long, but it's good. Mr. Fragglespock, thanks for your super chat. Hey, Olly, I have a horrid cold right now, but I'm here for the stream. As a disabled fan of yours, I'd love to see you do the philosophy of disability. Thanks for your encouragement. Yeah, I'd like to as well. It's something that I definitely need to do more research on. I'm definitely not going to rule it out. And Mad Blender says, amazing collab, guys. Keep up the great work. Love you, Mex. Tom Robinson. Tom Robinson asks, would you consider doing a video on the hypocrisy of the right wing, how they say they care about facts but mostly use arguments from emotion? That's maybe like a bit of a generalization, but my Steve Bannon video is going to talk about that a little bit, like the use of emotion as a technique and so on. So it's gonna come up a little bit. So I guess while there's a temporary lull in the super chats, there was another really good bit of feedback I got that was in note to self. Spider Mantifa on Twitter, which is a screen name that I love. Always laughing when I see Spider Mantifa come up. Said, my girlfriend's dad built his house himself. He's a working class construction worker. How would you explain the same concepts of removing ownership to him? Which I thought was like a really good challenge.
Well, I mean, the thing is that like we wouldn't be removing him from his house. It's just that if he ever wanted to leave the house, he wouldn't be selling that to someone. It would be like, okay, I'm leaving, so I'm going to join this lottery over there and go wherever I want to live. And then someone will join the lottery here to determine if they will live in this house. So, but it's not like you don't have your house anymore immediately, Yeah. It's only if you want to leave.
Yeah, so if I was talking to this, exactly as you say, if I was talking to this girlfriend's dad, like first thing I would stress is like, you don't have to move out if you don't want to, like, you can stay. But obviously, he can't sell the house anymore, which I can definitely sympathize with. Like if you built it yourself and you can't sell it anymore, that sucks. My inclination is always to be honest with people. So whenever I said to that guy, I'd make sure to be like, "I'm sorry that you've been unlucky here." One thing that stood out to me though, as like a possible avenue of persuasion, is that people often sell houses so that they can have enough money to buy another house.
Yeah.
And in a system where housing is free, you don't need to do that anymore. So yeah, like sucks that you've built this house and you can't sell it even though you put a lot of work into it. But the system as a whole is still fairer, and like he hasn't actually lost out that badly. I think the really interesting question that this throws up though is bequeathing properties, or not, because properties, residencies, because they're no longer property. But when let's say this Spider-Mantifer's girlfriend's dad sadly passes away at a ripe old age after a very, very long and happy life, can he bequeath the right to live there to his daughter, Spider-Mantifer? What kind of impact?
Ooh, that's a tough question. That is a tough question. Because then that, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, that's tough because obviously it's like, well, you built it yourself and you wanna pass it to your family or whatnot. But yeah, then it's like, well, then if people just have, well, I guess there wouldn't necessarily be something wrong with that, other than like if it's a really like desired area and there's a lot of people waiting in the lottery, and then someone like you just get it because your dad had the house.
Yeah, I think another issue this throws up is like, how many houses can you be a legal resident of? That might be something that might be one of those questions where rather than figure out the a priori answer before we go in, it might be something that we have to like figure out as we go. So I guess my inclination is to say yes. You know, you build a house, you're the legal resident there, or you're the legal resident of any house, even if you didn't build it. You can bequeath the kind of right to live there to your next of kin. So let's say this house is in rural Northumberland, just to pick a county purely out of nowhere, not because it's the most beautiful and my favorite. So let's say there's this house in rural Northumberland, and the girlfriend, the daughter, lives in London. The dad dies and bequeaths the right to live there to the daughter. At that stage, like, she has a choice. She can either move to the house in there, which would mean giving up the place in London, and that goes on the lottery, or she can turn it down, in which case the Northumberland one goes on the lottery as well. But I guess like leaving one of them empty is the situation we want to avoid.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that might be our guide. Like, remembering the goal is to make sure everyone is that there's no house being left empty that doesn't need to be, unless, you know, they're all full and we just have spares.
Right. Yeah, that's a good answer, I think. Yeah.
Caesar, son of Mars, conqueror of the 86 tribes, says Yorkshire's better than Northumberland, you cuck. You know what? My mum's from Yorkshire. I'm half Yorkshire. It's definitely up there. It's definitely up there on the list. The food in Yorkshire is astonishing. I had a holiday on to Whitby around about this time, Christmas last year. I went on holiday to Whitby. It was astonishingly good. Despite the company, it was an astonishingly good place to go. So yeah, I guess in terms of like figuring out who can bequeath houses to who, that's I'm hoping that some kind of system like the one we've outlined would stop there being like dynastic, like castles being passed down dynastically. Although if you've seen my video on the royal family, you might know that I might be in favour for one or two castles being passed down dynastically, but I'm happy to let that go if it means a more equitable system generally.
I love that video.
Stay there. Just want to stay there one night. I just want to see it. My family's freaking buried there, for God's sake. I want to see it. No, I gotta let that sort of thing go. Okie dokie. I'm scrolling through my notes to self and seeing if I've got any more big things I want to hit on. Oh, I guess one really good point that somebody called Treehead Ginger Ale pointed out is that abolishing rent is hopefully going to help a lot of people who are trapped in abusive households move out. Which, yes,
oh my god, yeah,
big supporter of that. And I guess also hopefully a lot of trans people, if they come out, who sadly families, if their families don't support them, then they also have
Right.
an option to get away as well. So we're not
Yeah.
just it's not just homelessness that this sort of policy would help address. It's a lot of social ills. Just giving people a bit more freedom.
Yeah. Hey,
Let's
freedom.
reclaim that. Since hardcore capitalism was like, yay,
Individual
freedom. It's like,
freedom.
well, how about you keep going, keep riding the freedom train to the next stop,
Yeah.
and then everyone gets free housing. Freedom from want is the ultimate freedom. I can't remember who said that.
Yeah.
But, was that a dog I heard?
Probably.
Did I hear a dog in the background?
Not in my house, but maybe outside.
Okay, fair enough. I thought you had a secret pupper. Okay, there's a few more super chats flooding in.
Someone said Mexie say trans rights, so trans rights.
Woo!
Woo!
Trans rights.
Trans rights.
Yeah, big time. So Ina Claire Yarborough asked, would changing housing, how housing is developed, change other systems like public school districts? Interesting one.
Well,
how is school done in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the taxes from a certain area go into like paying for the school system. So yeah, potentially, although I guess it's like you could still have, I guess, income tax if we're operating under a capitalist system. I mean, I think both of us would want the society like to be pushed further. So it's not just housing that's socialized. It's like
it's a good place to start, but let's keep going. It's like improv. Socialized. It's like yes and yes, like marginal tax 70%. Yeah, and keep it going, keep it going.
Yeah. So I mean, ideally, we would socialize schooling as well. But I guess if you're asking about like a capitalist system, then yeah, I mean, I guess you'd still have like, I guess, income tax of people living in a certain area would go towards schooling or whatnot. Yeah.
Cool. So Scaledra Man, I see your game, Scaledra Man. You've been in my chat a lot. Says, Mexie, do you have any thoughts on meta ethics and its real world impact? This is a question from a fan who wants me to do a very technical video on meta ethics. And okay. I'm gonna get a bit of mention on the stream, aren't you? Don't worry, I'm still working on it. My challenge for the meta ethics and the ethics video, my challenge that I'm setting myself is costume. I have a hell of a look planned, and I'm also going to get someone to help me with that look, to help me with the nails that I have planned for that. So there's a potential nail consultant who might be helping me with that.
That video. Sounds really exciting.
Oh yeah, I've got a hell of a look planned for this. I need to just write the script and also like book the studio and stuff. I'm like toying with the idea of I don't know when I'm going to bring it out. I don't know whether it's so the next one's going to be Steve Bannon, and I don't know what the one after that's going to be yet. I've got a lot of notes towards this one on morality and like good and evil and stuff, but I'm not really sure yet. Or maybe I should do one on like Brexit and sovereignty. But I've done a lot of political ones recently, so maybe it would be a good time to like go back to something a bit more hardcore.
Yeah, hardcore philosophy.
Yeah, some like good technical meta ethics just for you, Scalator Man. I'm working on it. Don't worry. You know what? I even bumped into him at the tube station the other day.
Wow,
he recognized me. I was on my way to the gym and I was just in sweatpants. I looked like ass. And I was like, oh, what if I get? And then I was like, no one's gonna recognize me. I'm gonna go to the gym. It's just down the road. And then as soon as I got to the tube station, Scalator Man was there. He was like, hey! And I was like, ah.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Hey, I
like,
look
no,
like
this
ass.
isn't me. This isn't me.
I look like ass.
Yep.
Parasocial. Small super chats. TCAT asks, speaking of housing, what are your takes on UBI and how that could potentially lead to self-sufficient communes if all the members of said communes put a certain percentage of their UBI together? Ooh, interesting. I think, do you have a video on UBI, don't you?
Yes, I have a video on UBI and a podcast on it.
Maybe we should say what it is, just in case anyone in the chat doesn't know.
Universal basic income.
You want to give a quick writing definition?
Yeah, so it's universal basic income. So it's the idea that everyone would get a quote unquote basic income. My problem is that if it's administered under a capitalist system, then it's not going to be a living wage. Like the elite or the capitalists are not going to give people enough money that they can actually just exit the labor market altogether. So it's going to be insufficient. Probably like some of the ideas I've seen floated around are super neoliberal. So it's like, okay, you get this chunk of money every month, but it's not enough to live on. But then instead of that, like because you're getting that, you're not getting, universal health care, you're not getting social security or benefits or whatever. It's like you're just getting your basic income. So basically, it's a way to make sure that there's always like a pool of workers ready to work low wage positions, and just also a way to lower the other benefits or just remove them altogether. So yeah, and anyway, I won't like go over my whole video, but I think that under capitalism, it has the potential of being pretty dystopian. However, I do think that it's coming, and so I do think that we should be vigilant about that and be able to fight for something that would be, more equitable, that would give people more power to exit the labor market if they so chose. But yeah, I mean, I guess if everyone was getting UBI, maybe it could be some kind of a stepping stone towards what we're talking about. There's another thing called Le Salaire à Vie that I also talked about in that same video. That's a different idea. It's supposed to be a stepping stone to post-capitalism, which seems a bit better, but also a bit more complicated and not really realistic. So sorry, that was vague.
No, I have to admit I'm ignorant of that second one, but yeah,
Okay.
I take your point about UBI. I really enjoyed your work on it, and Bad Mouse has a great video on it as well, which is really interesting. I guess like again, it's like yes, but what else? I think explaining when I've had conversations with people about UBI, it's and they kind of don't know what it is. It can be a good way of opening the door to the idea of maybe we don't have to work. Maybe we shouldn't have an economy in which people have to work to survive. That I find it can be good way of opening that door. But again, it's like yes, and like what else can we go for? What more can we push? Oh dear, sorry, hang on. Sorry, my microphone's falling apart.
Man, that is a beast.
It is indeed. It weighs about like 5 tons. Sorry about the show. Hang on. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that holds together. Fingers crossed. Yeah, it is a bit of a beast. Okay. Agile B, nice, says, hey Olly, discovered you in the fall. You've been a much needed source of inspiration and joy. Question, how do you account for people that want to build their own homes? Where are they allowed to build? So we kind of touched on somebody building their own home earlier on, but in terms of where do people build, I guess that's kind of like up to the local collectivist, whether it's like councils or whether it's like residents unions or whatever. I guess unless you have any different thoughts on that.
No, yeah, I would say definitely. I guess you could approach the local, tenant union or commune or wherever that you want to build and discuss with them, what they think. And I don't see it as a problem if people want to build their own homes, because if they weren't building them, then, the union would just organize for it to be built anyway. So it's like, okay, you're doing the work that we would have to do. So that's great. I don't see that as being a problem.
Cool. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement there. Phil the Thrill, thanks for your super chat. Says, I'm a filthy centre-left squish, so I'm not all in on your ideas. But you present them well, and you have me re-engaging with ideas I've taken for granted. Keep saying yes and, Phil. Keep saying yes and. We'll get you in. Randomated says, what do you think of the Preston Cleveland models and community wealth building as a praxis for building up socialist economics from the bottom up? Also rebuild Hadrian's Wall and make Wessex pay for it. I have no idea what the Preston Cleveland models are, I'm afraid. Do you?
Me neither. Yeah, no, sorry. I don't know what that is.
Sorry about that then, Randomated.
Sorry.
Would rather admit to that than give you a half-formed thought. Wintermute says, should every individual be able to have a home if they desired, or should multi-generational housing be encouraged? Ooh. So I was speaking a while ago to Ashton Applewhite, who is an anti-ageism activist, who was saying that intergenerational housing should really be encouraged from the point of view of getting people to be sort of less prejudiced towards our elders, which is a really interesting idea. And kind of, I think ageism is often neglected. Maybe I should do a video. That'd be good. but yeah, maybe for my 30th birthday, if I'm still doing YouTube when I'm 30, I'll do ageism and analysis.
Awesome.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm down with intergenerational living. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I'm like down for that. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the context too. Like if there's an area with, a low population and there's a lot of resources or whatever, then maybe, yeah, having people live singularly makes more sense. As long as we have enough, as long as we're not overtaxing like our energy sources and things like that in order to let people live in that way. Because I think, again, we should be moving towards some kind of quote unquote resource based economy where, what we're putting in is equal to what we're getting out or taking out. But I guess in places where maybe it's really populated and yeah, maybe it's just a really populated place, then maybe yeah, intergenerational living would make more sense as well. Even in an unpopulated place, I think I have no problem with encouraging that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like it's good in a lot of ways, right? So
yeah. Alex Winchester, thank you for your super chat. Says, love your stuff. It's been a huge contribution to recently falling off the classical liberal anti-SJW bandwagon and
ooh,
reassessing my own stances. Alex, I'm so glad to have you here, mate. Those are the comments I love, or when people are like, well, I get emails
absolutely.
like, I used to be alt-right, or I used to be sort of vaguely proto-alt-right. And then people say they watch me and Sean and they change their minds. And I'm like,
That's amazing.
that's my favorite comments.
Yeah.
So grand to have you here. Kay Erez really opens the discussion up in a really nice way by asking thoughts on how we might tackle these issues in a way that prioritizes decolonization.
Man, I was thinking about that earlier.
That would have been really good to include in the video. There was that
Yeah.
bit there was that bit right at the end where I was like just trying to talk about the global south and stuff. And
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, that would have
Mm,
been really good. Sorry, I cut
mhm.
you off there.
No, yeah, no, I think about that a lot. It's a really hard question in North America because everything that we do is on indigenous territory, right? So it's hard to think about, even these tenant unions that we might think about creating, like what right do we have to this land or this territory to decide like what goes on here, right? So I think, I mean, if you're living in a settler colony like myself, I mean, yeah, I think step one is to understand the nations, like the indigenous nations that we actually inhabit, because like Canada is false, right? Canada is just this
Mm,
illegal colony, whatever. So we have to actually learn about the nations that we inhabit and then understand what that means in terms of our responsibility, like to the land and to like the indigenous nations that we inhabit. So yeah, I think that's like a fundamental step. And then I mean, yeah, I guess we would just have to really let the nations that we live in, dictate how we would run these like collective communes, et cetera. Like it wouldn't just be like, okay, we're taking the land now and we're going to do this. Like, but yeah, that's a tough question. Definitely a tough question.
yeah, I guess making sure that the indigenous people have an authoritative voice on that,
Yeah,
on whatever that local body is that does administer housing, would
absolutely.
be a great
Yeah.
way of doing that.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Hmm.
Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you very much for saying that in. Sean Ravenfire asked, could a person who worked hard and saved money still buy a luxury house in a system with free housing? I'm inclined to say no, because nobody can buy a house. That's kind of the point.
Also, like a lot of people work hard. Like working hard doesn't mean that you're making a lot of money that you can then spend on something like bourgeois.
Yeah, that kind of relationship between working hard and making lots of money is perhaps not.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if you work hard and you make a lot of money, like there's all kinds of other things you could get.
Uh-huh.
Get yourself some coloured lights. They're great.
Right, yeah.
It really feels like
Yeah.
luxury when you can
Get
choose the
some
colour of the light.
candles.
Yeah, candles, right. It's not always about fancy housing.
Mm,
And Mel D says, speaking of housing, I'm in a tight spot looking for some donations for my rent. Could I ask for a signal boost? Hashtag trans crowdfund. Just this once, Mel D. Normally, I get a lot of requests and people being like, can you signal boost my stuff? And if I did it, I'd be
mhm,
there all day.
mhm.
But just this once, Mel D, if there's any way anybody can help her out, big love
Yeah.
to you. Okie dokie. I think that is, I'm going through my notes to self. And that was just about all of the kind of the serious ones.
Mm.
I guess I had some artistic notes to myself, which were about like the accent. Niall content, and I just have a note here that says, "Could I have explored the character of Niall content maker a bit more? Maybe." So yeah, I guess that might have been nice. Yeah, that might have been
it
cool.
would be good.
The accent is called General American. It's what they teach you at a British drama school. It is not any American's real accent. It is what a British person needs to hear in order to understand that the character is American.
That's so funny.
It's cool, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like so the example that my accent coach taught us is Downton Abbey. So Downton Abbey, the accents are really, really accurate for a completely different time period. The people in that time period would actually have spoken very, very differently, but they would have spoken in such a way that nowadays sounds silly. So people wouldn't have been able to empathize with them. So they're like, we're going to make this a really, really accurate accents in Downton, but for like several decades later, because that's what the audience needs to hear to understand for the purposes of the story of the time, right? And they have a way of talking which they didn't actually have. So it's always like stuff like that's always I find like really interesting.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, that's why the accent is General American, which I guess also is why a lot of I shouldn't complain when Americans play Brits and are bad at it, because it's like it's what the American audience needs to hear to understand that the character is British.
Yeah, that's true.
Benjamin Hume with another super chat of the night asks, is there any hope for me doing economics and philosophy, getting work in the arts? I want to be a writer, and working in something like the socialist theatre you mentioned sounds great, but I'm worried I wouldn't be desirable. Mate, like more than it's all hands to the pump artistically at the moment. Like,
right,
jump in. I mean, there's no work in theatre at all in London. I can tell you that for free. The acting industry is completely on its ass, but that's not your fault. So
you're not going to get rich. You're not going to get rich,
you're not going to get work. But more the merrier. Like people, I know people in the artistic scene who have come from it from all kinds of backgrounds. Like, so I have a master's in acting, but my first degree was philosophy. So. And I know people who do economics. I know a lawyer who is really keen into writing plays at the moment. And I know people who are like big time slam poets who've come from all over the place. So just muck in if you want. If you want to give it a go, I might as well roll the dice. And Chloe Pechlana, I'm sorry I don't know how to pronounce that, says, I'm from Tyrol and Italy still has half of it. I guess what should we do?
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't know anything about Tyrol, so I might not be the best place to advise you on that.
Let me just Google that real quick.
Yeah. Again, I'd rather admit ignorance than give a half-formed thought. Richard Olson says, have you considered doing a video on body image? Yeah, I kind of did it. I did one called "Why Do I Hate My Space Self," which was about it was kind of about a theory of mind, where an internal critic is, according to philosopher Simon Critchley, your internal critical voice is like central to having a mind. But I would be it's been a while since I made that video, and I think if I ever make Cosmonaut Part 2, I'm going to revisit the character of Mr. Not Good Enough and sort of bring him back and talk a little bit about that, because I learned a lot of things about my internal critical voice in the last few months that would be good to consider. Okie dokie. Why don't we take stock? We've been going for an hour and about an hour and 15 at the moment. We've gone through all the notes to myself that I had. Do you have any other notes on the video that you wanted to bring up, or we can kind of hang out for another 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah. No, I don't think I had any more notes to bring up. So yeah, we can hang out. The decolonization is something that I think a lot more deeply about. I think we all have to think more deeply about that. It's really hard. Yeah. It's really hard to have these conversations in a settler colonial context, but
but I'm keen to show people that we're not shying away from issues like that. So I guess we can relax now. How are you doing anyway, Mexie? How are you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah, pretty tired actually, but I just put out a video today, so hopefully people enjoy it.
Yeah,
It's
you've been
like
working
it's
hard.
not. It's pardon.
Have you been working hard on it?
Yeah, well, and I mean, it didn't take me like a lot of editing or whatever because it's kind of just me talking. It's kind of just addressing some issues on the left. I basically address like cancel culture in like leftist spaces and like how we deal with people who do harm in the movement. But so it's not one of my typical like political economy videos. It's kind of just me talking about this because I've been thinking a lot about it. But yeah, hopefully it's well received. But
After the stream, I'm going to get myself some ice cream and then I'm going to watch it.
awesome.
Yeah. Oh, an ice cream in ages. I'm finally going to allow myself to have a bit of a treat. Melody Adelaide, thank you for your super chat, who just says in all caps, I love you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very, very glad to have you here. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I've been working on this Steve Bannon video for like 5 days.
I'm so excited to see it.
Yeah. I got my footage on Sunday night. And then Harry's stream ended my time 7 a.m. Monday morning, so I was around for that. And then I've worked like pretty much constantly editing since then, and it's almost done. I still need to put the music in. It's really quite difficult to find the right music because the tone bounces around a bit from like very serious to hilarious. Carl Smith, thank you for that super chat. Says, what kind of ice cream will you get? Chocolate fudge brownie every time.
Ooh.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to get a bit of chocolate fudge brownie and a little bit of cookie dough and mix them together, but I'm trying not to do that anymore.
That sounds
very
good.
bad for me, and I'm making good progress body-wise and don't need to undo it.
Body-wise, Mr. Not Good Enough.
Yeah, I know. I'm training hard. I'm in training at the moment.
That's good.
I'm doing speaking of bodies and like masculine body types, I'm doing tomorrow I'm recording a podcast called Ballin' Out Super. I'm going to be on a podcast. It's a leftist Dragon Ball Z podcast.
Damn.
I'm a big fan of their work, and they're finally gonna have me on. And I'm like, yes,
wow. What's it called?
Ballin' Out Super.
Ballin' Out, but like that's the name of the podcast?
That's the name of the podcast, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ballin' Out Super. All right.
I'm so excited for it because I was, as a slightly younger guy, certainly at college, an enormous weeb, and have never had the opportunity to talk about anime like ever on the show.
Amazing.
So, revved.
You should do a video about anime.
I know I should. I have a plan. I can't say what it is, but it's good. Yeah, I have a plan.
Okay,
at some point soonish, there will be something anime related.
Excellent.
that is basically just like a very, very specific joke between me and one other person that I'm going to turn into a whole video.
Perfect.
Somebody else had a great question, but it's just scrolled past. Oh, hey, somebody had a cool one. Quacks BK says, "Hey guys, popping in late. I have a question directed at Mexie, as I think I'm going through something similar as she is. How do you decide on a tendency, or rather, who to believe?"
Oh man. See, yeah, I'm gonna disappoint a lot of people in being like, I don't think you need to decide on a tendency. Like, I don't think that you do. Like for me, like I said, there's a lot of things that I think we should, start low and then build upwards. So it's like, it's like, a lot of what I like or what I want to see happen in the world in the future comes from a more like, I guess, anarchist background, but like, my work comes from a very Marxist background because it's, analyzing the material conditions of production, et cetera. So anyway, there's a lot of, I think that we need to look at what is going on right now, analyze the material conditions right now. And I think we need to build like dual power. Like we need to have organization to attack the system, kind of from the top down, but we also need to build, prefigurative politics from the bottom up. And I just don't think it's that useful to be like, I am this, and that means this, and that means these are all my positions, and I'm unwavering on that. Like, I will never choose a tendency.
I will never choose a tendency. I guess it cuts down on the possibility of the yes and.
Right. Yeah.
I've met people of all kinds of different tendencies and backgrounds and stuff who sometimes have like really interesting, cool ideas. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, let's have what you've got, have a little bit of what you've got, a little bit of what you've got, and everyone can sort of chuck in something.
Right.
It's more fun that way as well.
It's more fun, but it's also more like, yeah, it's more like able to react to the times that we are in right now, because a lot of people's ideas come from things that have happened in the past, and like, yeah, we have a lot to learn from that, and there's a lot of good stuff there, but also, yeah, and what? And today, what about today? What are we doing here now? What makes sense, you know? So
Because the right are really good at banding together and doing the yes and thing. Like I don't know if you've
right.
seen Ian Danskin's latest video from the alt-right playbook, which is about that, and there's a very kind of different
Mhm.
reason why they do that. But
Mhm. Yeah.
Jimmy in the chat says, "Who is screaming? Choose a tendency outside my window. Show yourself, coward. I will never choose a tendency." Nice. It's a drill reference. People in the chat didn't get it. Arta Yeon or Yeon in the chat asks, have you, Ollie, watched any of Kinihiko Ukuhara's work, like Revolutionary Girl Utena, or any of that kind of anime? I have not. People have recommended Revolutionary Girl Utena to me before, but I have not. I have just finished watching an anime series called AI Tenchi Muyo, which is trash. Do
Mm.
not watch it. I was a big fan of Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Oki as a boy. It was one of the first animes I watched, so I had to watch it for nostalgia, but it's bad. Don't watch AI Tenchi Muyo. It made me feel very sorry for the voice actors who have to deliver what is generously referred to as the script.
Mm.
It had Patrea Birchardin, who's one of my favorite voice actors. I have her book, which I finished reading the other day, and it's really, really good. So yeah, I watched it. I watched it for the nostalgia, but it's bad. Don't watch it. Tenchi Muyo. It's very #problematic.
Oh,
Yeah,
that sucks. Don't you hate when your faves just let you
famous.
down?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I'm gonna get loads of messages from people now, email being like, "Why are you friends with Tenchi Muyo? They're really toxic and exclusionary. Like, you shouldn't have them."
Oh no. Yeah.
Let's get enough of that. Let's get enough of
Yeah.
that. Badooby dooby 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 doo. Oh, here's a good question from Allegria Peters. How do you talk to stubbornly aggressive centrist people who actually believe that the right stands for free speech? I'm in a massive fight with a friend of mine because of this. Ooh.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I know people have made like amazing videos on this, but yeah, they don't stand for free speech. They stand for their own speech. Like they don't want to hear anyone else's speech. Like they stand for censorship too. It's just that they think that their censorship, like we're only censoring the lies, guys. You guys are censoring the truth, right? But they don't actually want, like they don't want a bunch of communists coming up and giving speeches in their territory. You know, they don't want to sit there and respectfully listen to people talking about anarchism. They don't want that at all. They just don't want anyone to react or like get upset when they come and say reactionary shit, you know?
Yeah, I think who wrote Anti for the Anti-Fascist Handbook? I'm blanking. I want to say Mark
Oh,
Fisher, but it wasn't. Who wrote Anti for the Anti-Fascist Handbook? I'm going to Google it right now. I'm sure it was a Mark. It's somebody, Mark somebody.
Mark.
And Mark Bray.
Okay.
Wrote Anti for the Anti-Fascist Handbook, and he has a great chapter in that about free speech. And he says, "Thank you, chat. It is Mark Bray," and he says a lot of leftists are actually like more in favor of free speech than a lot of people, because if you're against things like prisons or deportations, you're actually going to be increasing free speech a lot more. And I remember having a discussion a while ago with somebody. I said, well, I would be in favor for giving prisoners a lot more free speech, for instance. And they said, being put in prison doesn't restrict your free speech. To which the response was, well, if being put in prison doesn't restrict your free speech, then how does shutting somebody out of a university or shutting down their shitty reactionary protest, how is that,
Right.
which is a much less major infraction, how
Yeah.
is that an infraction of free speech? And they got very
Yeah.
cross.
And I mean, yeah, like free speech, like they have free speech as well. Like nobody's, but also the protesters have free speech to protest. Like that's, everyone has free speech. So I can go protest you with your speech. But yeah, I had something else to say. I forget.
No worries. Scutch in the chat, thank you again for stopping by, Scutch. If you weren't here at the start, Scutch was the artist who did the incredible art for the video, which I can't show you for technological reasons right now, but I did show it on my last stream that I did. So yeah, Scutch just says, Ollie, watch Hunter x Hunter. Okay, I'll put it on my anime list. I'll put it on the anime list. And Lawson has a question for you. I don't understand this, so I apologize if it's unusual or strange. But it says, Mexie, when are we taking this boy to Disgraceland?
Oh, yeah, you got to visit Toronto. So
Is that a name for Toronto?
No, but do you know who Thought Slime is?
Yeah.
Step
I'm
Back
familiar with
History?
them, yeah.
Okay, so me, Thought Slime, and Step Back History hold like meetups at Disgraceland like every once in a while. So yeah, we got to bring you to Disgraceland, but you got to
What
come
is
to
it?
Toronto first. It's just like a bar. It's a vegan bar, like kind of grungy bar place, and we all meet there and talk and drink and laugh and discuss the revolution or whatever. But yeah, you got to come.
I didn't know that Tristan was based out of Toronto as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
Tristan's a legend.
yeah.
I do need to visit Canada. I need to visit
Oh.
Vancouver because my brother-in-law is going to be moving. My brother's wife's brother is moving to Vancouver, so I need to go and visit him. And also, Theron, if any of you out there know Theron lives in Vancouver as well, so I need to go and visit her too.
Well, Vancouver is very far from Toronto, but hopefully you come to Toronto also.
Yeah. Canada's all one thing in my
It's
mind.
like across the continent, but yeah.
I think I've been to Toronto. I think I have. Badoo. There's a couple more super chats coming in, but first, Wintermute says, "Hey Ollie, the last few streams haven't been archived. Are you planning on stopping stream archival, or were they just quirks?" So I didn't archive the one two back because there was big serious technical difficulties at the start, and like the first 20 minutes are just me faffing, so I didn't archive that because it just doesn't look good. If that's somebody's first experience of the channel, I didn't want that to be that. And then the last one was unarchived for a bit while I made some minor edits to it, but it's now my 300,000 subscribers live stream is now, you can now view it again, so don't worry. And this one will almost certainly be archived unless one of us says something absolutely horrific in the next 5 minutes. Forbidden Stream gang in the chat. Yes, the Forbidden Stream. There was a Forbidden Stream about which we do not speak. Melody Adelaide with another super chat says, "I love you, Philosophy Tube. What do you think about hippies?" Thanks. I did a whole video about them and Elon Musk. Yeah, that was my thoughts on it. That's my thoughts on hippies. Yeah, I did a whole video about that and Elon Musk. Do you have any thoughts on hippies, Mexie?
On hippies?
Yeah.
I mean, well, you say Elon Musk was a hippie?
No, the idea of the comprehensive designer, the kind of technological wizard who goes beyond the system and creates something new, is very much informed by some kind of hippie ideology.
Oh, I see. Yeah. My thoughts on hippies, I mean, yeah, power to them, I guess, but I'm not sure that it's not going to lead to system change, right? It's like kind of individual change.
I suppose if it's kind of a spiritual transformation first.
Yeah.
Tar all hippies with the same brush.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat is asking, "What's the Forbidden Stream?" You know exactly what the Forbidden Stream is. Natalie, I see you. Welcome. Good to have you here. Right, we'll do a few more super chats and then we'll wrap up. All right. So somebody's been asking for ages. Do we have any thoughts?
Power to them, I guess, is a shade. Yeah.
Somebody asked in the chat, what's your take on Doi Moi and the glorious socialist-oriented market economy? I think this is a question about Vietnam, about which I know absolutely nothing, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I don't know much either, but if it's a market-oriented reform, then yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it led to, in part, what Vietnam is now. Although, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can't really discuss this. So
no,
sorry.
I'm afraid. But again, we like to admit when we don't know rather than just make stuff up. Thomas M. Creamer, thank you for your super chat, says, free speech. I got banned from an Irish reactionary page by arguing that taxes aren't evil and transphobic memes aren't funny. Well, if you're going to get banned, then that's probably a good reason to do it. Alice Pope Terry, thank you for another super chat, says, your split mind video helped me contextualize and fight my internalized transphobia. I'm really glad that we could help you do that. That is wonderful. That's really, really sweet. And we have another one from BC Power, who says, hello from Newfoundland. I'm an undergraduate music composition student. Whoa. Was wondering if you have any recommendations of the philosophy of music. I did a video ages ago with with This Exists, which was all about the philosophy of music, which was ages and ages and ages ago. So my thoughts are all in there, and I'm afraid I don't have any more. I'm just trying to find the music that we like to end the live stream on. Thank you to Nat and to Chrisiosity for turning up.
Mhm.
So we are now into, as soon as I manage to get this music actually playing, we'll be into the final 5 minutes of the stream. And then I'm going to get my screen.
So official.
Yeah. I always like to end on this lovely music from Zoe Blade, who is also here in the chat as well.
Oh, beautiful.
So, yes, nice. All right. What a lovely chill stream.
Beautiful. I loved it.
Where
This is so
Darren's-
fun.
Yeah, this was really good. Nice. This is really good. I love having a
That's
guest.
really good. Yeah, it's really fun. All your viewers are amazing. I love all their questions.
Aren't they just?
Yeah.
They're wonderful. Melody Adelaide asks, do you prefer dragons or unicorns? I'm going to go dragons, but I don't know about you.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's a tough call. It's a tough call. They're both so different, right? It's like, what are you in the mood for? Sometimes I'm in the mood for dragons. Sometimes I'm in the mood for unicorns.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yes, and to mythological creatures.
Yes, and.
Somebody says, seeing your Superman shirt, what are your favorite DC Comics moments? Never read them. No, never read them. I literally just got this because I like the Christopher Reeve Superman films. As I say at the start, I got this for my 17th birthday, and I still have it. I got it as a present from my high school girlfriend, who I believe is now a paramedic somewhere in the north. And I have a horrible fear that at some point I'll collapse on the street, and then she'll be required to save my life. Probably be fine.
And you'll be wearing the shirt.
Yeah, still got it.
Yeah. You're like, wow, you hold on to this.
Yeah, just go to the gym, and when I need to dress as Superman as well.
Yeah.
If anyone has sent any other super chats, I'm afraid we can no longer see them. They are gone. They have gone away. They've faded into the ether. But thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you for your super chats. Yeah, sorry people are like, please see my super chat about X, Y, and Z. I'm sorry, we can't see them anymore.
Someone's been asking if I would make more videos on veganism. Probably, but I make them like mainly as they relate to like capitalism and the environment. I have like a podcast where I talk more about veganism, so
cool.
Check that out. Yeah,
I should definitely get a podcast as well. I need to research veganism more, but mainly all my podcasts have been I've just been working through the entire back catalogue of Balling Out Super.
Yeah, I gotta get into that.
It's so good. Harry recommended it to me. He was like,
really
he said it. He just said 3 words. He was like, leftist anime podcast. I was like, yes, sign me up. I'm doing it. Bring it on. Thank you, Zoe Blade, very much, not only for this wonderful music that we're hearing, but also for being our moderator this evening. It's very, very kind of you to come on.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. I love your music.
Oh yeah, it's so. Oh my word, the Steve Bannon video has music from Nina Richards and Zoe. And it's astonishing. The song that they have, it's so good. I'm so pleased with it. Like, even my singing is decent in it, decent-ish. I did like a proper 30-minute vocal warm-up before we recorded the audio. Oh yeah, I'm singing like 3 different parts. It's a musical theatre song from a musical called Hades Town, and it's like,
I'm so excited for this. When's it coming out?
Early February. So I'm going on a little bit of a holiday in early February, which I've been making some arrangements for today. And I'm going to hopefully bring it out when I'm on holiday, possibly just before I go.
Excellent.
Yeah. So this song that we're hearing now is Walking in the Rain by Zoe Blade. And it's the music that we like to end the stream on. So we're now down to the final 2.5 minutes, people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vegan communism, fuck yeah. Someone asked what I think about Quebec independence. Like, yeah, go for it. Go for it if you want.
Oh, Riley Reffel in the chat says, I asked Olly earlier today on Twitter if he's listened to Hadestown, and he says, yeah, the next video has it in. Yeah, the next video is going to be really inspired by Hadestown. As soon as I saw it at the National, it's now completely sold out for the entire run. Yeah, I managed to get £15 tickets to it through my flatmate, who got more like Today ticks. And we were sat in the very back row. We heard and saw the entire thing. It's wonderful. It's incredible. If you can steal, beg, or borrow tickets to Hadestown at the National, go. It's phenomenal. And Hades has these incredible shoes that I want so badly. These incredible, like, black cowboy boots with big metal heels on them. And I was like, oh, yes. And he sings this incredible song, which I am going to sing in the video as well.
Oh, are you going to get the boots?
I'm not. I do have cowboy boots. I have red cowboy boots, but sadly I don't have big devil boots. I need to get some. Next time I'm in, because these ones are starting to fall apart. So next time I'm in the US, I need to visit the Wild Bill's Cowboy Emporium in Texas and pick myself up some new boots. Nina Richards is in the chat. Says, can't wait for the video. Nina is the one who has arranged the song. She's done an incredible job. Oh, it sounds so good, and you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. I've arranged it in such a cool way. Yeah, the credits are gonna be just
amazing.
I'm really excited.
Amazing.
Okie dokie. I think it is time to say goodnight.
All right.
So thank you very much, Mexie, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you to everyone for joining us as well. Thank you to Zoe and Nina and Nat and Chris Yosti and everyone for joining us in the chat. Have a wonderful evening. I just get a text message. I'm going to have some ice creams and watch a video and make a phone call to someone. And I will see you in the next stream. Good night, everyone.
Good night.